Without further ado, let's get into our first question. And these are kind of broken down into categories. Our first category tonight for questions about friendships, relationships, etc. is this: making friends and maintaining friendships. You guys had a lot of questions about these things. The first one, we kind of boiled several questions down to this: how do I make friends? And the question behind that question is, why is it so hard sometimes to make friends? I'm going to toss this to Cameron first. Why don't you lead us off with this, since you're the pastor's son?
Awesome.
How do I make friends, and why is it so hard to make friends?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we got our handy-dandy packets up here. Just know that we are not reading directly our answers, but these just have some really good, helpful notes for us to look at. And I may have said some wiser stuff that I may not think of right on the spot. So if you see us glancing at that, that's what that's for. It's not a cheat sheet, I promise. But anyway, bringing up the topic of friends and why it's so hard to make friends. To bring up the words of a philosopher named Aristotle. You may have heard of that guy. He says, to be a friend to everyone is to be a friend to no one. And I believe that's actually baloney. I think that you should try to be friends to everyone. I think it's a good idea.
Aristotle.
Yeah, take that guy. But I think it's important to try to be a friend that you would want to have be in your life. I think one thing that makes it hard is that everybody's a little bit different. Everybody's unique in their own respect. And so that can be a little bit scary, because when somebody's a lot different than you, it may make you feel like you're alone and nobody else is exactly like you. Because we honestly do want to have friends that are a lot like us. But that's the beauty of when you become friends with somebody, then you start to like some of the same stuff and get some of the same interests. But to be a friend to other people, that sometimes means that you have to put yourself out there a little bit.
So am I hearing you right? The best way to make friends sometimes is just to be a great friend.
Be a great friend to everybody. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I'll add to that. If we just think about that very first part of the question, how do I make friends? I remember like being a little kid and like adults being like, just ask them to be your friend, and me being like, from this tall, being like, that's so weird. Like, that is not the way that I want to have friends. Will you be my friend? Has just never seemed like a normal way to obtain friendships or relationships with people. And I think we were talking about this beforehand. There's no formula. And like, I'm sorry if you wanted like a very direct answer of like, you just say this and you do this and boom, you got a friend. But I don't think that's what happens a lot of times. My best friendships have grown a lot organically over time. They started out kind of awkward, where it's like, would it be weird to hang out with this person? And it was, or maybe like it was a little forced, but as that relationship grows, it gets better. If I had to give a tip personally, and I think some of our more introverted people on stage might disagree with this, most of my friends have come because of the things that I was a part of. So I always liked being involved in a lot of things, whether that was soccer, tennis, different clubs at school, and definitely here at church. The things that I did put me in close proximity with people who shared some of my beliefs or some of my interests or some of the things I liked, or they were in the same situation in life that I was in. And that was such a good way for me to automatically have something. I think that's what's hard a lot of times. You're like, I don't even know what to say. But like, if you're at the same practice, you're like, running bad, huh? And like, boom, you have something, right? Or maybe your church, like, church good, huh?
So like, do stuff. Like,
do stuff.
Don't just sit at home
If I had
and be
to
like,
say
I got no
something
friends.
like,
Go
do stuff. But and you guys don't have to add to this right now, but I think maybe that would be specific to people like me.
Cool.
Maybe not other people.
Girls, do you have anything to add? How to make friends and why is it so hard?
By him.
Maybe they've talked about how to make friends. Do you guys have any answers to why is it so hard to make friends?
Yes. Well, so these are the extroverts right here and here, and partially Sarah, we talked about it. But for the introverts, doing things is my worst nightmare. And then also he ended it with put yourself out there, also my worst nightmare. So both of you are talking specifically to extroverts there.
Do you think they're students? Students, right? Don't say anything, but just nod your head if you're kind of like, yep, I agree with that.
yeah, I
just
see
talk
it.
to people and do stuff.
No, thank you. No, thank you. I've realized in my experience with making friends, whenever I leaned into my introvertedness, my friends sort of just, the other introverts kind of like came to me out of fear of the extroverts, maybe. I don't know. They like just drifted towards me. And so that has kind of developed my philosophy of like, whenever we talked about on Sunday of like being who you are first, and then your friends, you will like all kind of just come together in that way. I think it's the same for introverts. My best friends have come whenever I have been able to focus on actually being myself and not putting myself out there and not putting a bunch of energy into them, because introverts know that that is like a total drain, is to have friends that just suck all the energy out of you. So whenever I have like been my true introverted self, I've always found the best friends that way. I don't know. That's my advice.
So just be yourself
Yes.
and be okay with that.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good. All right, let me jump to the next question. And the next one that we want to address here with you guys, students in the room, is how do you know if someone is your friend? And how do you know if your friends actually like you or not? Which I felt this question, definitely when I was in high school, I felt this question. So how do you know if someone is really your friend, and how do you know if your friends actually like you or not? And Sarah, why don't I start with you over there?
Yeah, well, Grace and I kind of have a story that kind of relates to this because, as our introverted selves, we're kind of awkward sometimes. And that even happened in our own friendship.
Yeah.
And our own friendship kind of started because our mans were friends, if that makes sense. And I was
Our
friends
men.
with Jack.
Mhm.
And then Grace came along,
Yeah.
And so I didn't always know how to approach her. I don't know how to approach anybody really in a friendship.
Yeah.
So here's how it went. We talk, we have good times, but then when we go home, we're like, I don't really know if we're friends. I don't know if like
Yeah, we
I
were
should-
saying this to our significant
Yeah.
others. Like, I don't really know if Sarah really likes me.
Should
I
I
don't know.
bother
She's
her?
probably, yeah, I shouldn't bother her. We don't want to, I don't know.
no, this just isn't gonna go well, like no kind of thing. And eventually,
Our husbands texted each other.
fiance,
Or
but
almost husband, sorry. And then from that, they told us to hang out with each other, and then they made us hang out with each other. We were like, oh, you want to be my friend?
So all that to say, if you're having a good time with somebody and nothing's going wrong, you're probably friends. It's not like it has to be this whole like big deal that we made it to be, but
I know. Like, there didn't have to be some like magical being that came and was like,
Yes.
you can now be friends. And we were like, yes, thank you.
You know
And
what?
you-
I appreciate that though, because even as an adult, as a full, complete adult, Trisha and I talk about that all the time, that we're like, are we friends or are we just in the same space as
Right,
these people? And we're not
exactly.
But we don't have to be, so we're all awkward. We all have awkward moments like that, and that's okay, but it doesn't have to be such a big deal. I love that
Right.
story. That's great. Real quick, and we'll wrap up just kind of this section on friends, just some rapid fire stuff. Jack, I'll throw this to you. Can you give us maybe just a 30-second answer? What makes a good friend?
Yeah, we've talked about this. We talked about this 2 Sundays ago, but I know not all of you were here. So I'll just give you guys a quick recap of some of the stuff we've talked about. A good friend is somebody who is dependable. We looked at Proverbs 17:17. If you guys want any of these verses that I referenced throughout the night, just come and find me afterwards. Proverbs 17:17. A friend that makes wise choices, Proverbs 13:20. A friend that makes you better, Proverbs 27:17. That's about, as iron sharpens iron, one man sharpens another. So kind of what Cam said earlier, like how do we know what a good friend looks like? I mean, it's the things that you want to see in a friend. They care about you. They make you a better person, and you want to be better when you're around them. And like, let's see, there's a second part of this question about like, how do I tell who's a good friend and a bad friend? Well, if they're doing the good things, they're a good friend. If they're doing the opposite of that, then they're probably a bad friend. So we want good friends who don't talk behind our backs or gossip about us. So a bad friend would be somebody who does those things. So it's pretty identifiable. Like if you are, like they just said, like if you are around them and there's no problems and you enjoy it, you're probably friends. They're also probably a good friend if you're enjoying it. If you're enjoying their time and their presence in your life. If they're not, there's probably something wrong there. And sometimes it's just a personality thing, but there's also some signs that you guys can typically tell. Like you guys have that type of intelligence. You can see, hey, that doesn't seem right to me. So just listen
Good.
to yourselves.
That's really good. Let me throw this to Grace and Sarah. What about boundaries? How do we know like what are healthy boundaries in our friendships? Just thinking along the lines of like healthy friendships, bad friendships. What's good boundaries?
so
And what does that even mean? First of all, explain to these students
so we
what's
were
a boundary.
we kind of took this two ways. We didn't necessarily know how the student wanted to ask the question, but in my head, I took it as how do you set boundaries with, saying no, basically? And that's something that I struggle with. So, like, if a friend wants to hang out all the time, but you don't want to, I would lie and I would say, "Hey, mom, can you say no
Yeah.
so that I can say that you said no so that I don't have to hang out with him?" Which that's just lying.
Oh, use your parents. That's
Yes,
Exactly.
exactly.
It's a great no.
No, but in the end, it's like, are you able to talk to that friend and be honest with them and let them know what you want, if that makes sense?
No, yeah. That's good.
Yeah, I would say, "Mom, say it so that I'm not lying."
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Grace, did you have anything to add to that?
No, I agree with everything that
Cool.
Sarah was saying there. Yeah.
But I think making boundaries is eventually realizing that you have to say no, and if you don't ever say no to people, they will, they'll walk over you, and that's not necessarily like saying that your friends are bad people, but like
Yeah.
if you're not voicing your needs, they're not going to be met, kind of thing.
Well, and it's called peer pressure because we feel the pressure from our friends to, say yes to everything or to go along with everything. But on the topic of like what bad friends look like, we talk a lot about how that impacts our faith. So let's talk about our faith and friendships. And let me ask you guys this question. I'll throw this to Grace first. Let me just ask several questions and you speak to them. These were several questions we got from students. How do you end friendships that are detrimental to your faith? How do you end friendships that naturally seem to grow apart? Maybe you're just not as close as you once were. Or what if you want to even like save a friendship that feels like it's growing apart? So when's the right time to be like, not the right friendship and maybe call it quits? Or when's the right time to kind of fight for a relationship or friendship?
Yeah, I really like this question. I called dibs on it basically because I just recently kind of went, I don't know, like a friendship breakup kind of thing recently. And so
Is
I
it with
really
someone who's here?
no. Yes, Emma or Sophie Buck. No, I'm kidding. It is no one that's here, but I had recently gone through this, and so I related to the question pretty easily. So I kind of want to like jump to different parts here. So if you feel like you're in a friendship and the word was detrimental, you feel like it is detrimental to your faith, I put in big thing, don't do this. Don't like rebuke them, be like, oh, I can't be friends with you anymore because
God told me.
Yes,
That's the
God
worst.
came to me and told me that I can no longer be friends with you, or you don't do what the Bible is doing, and so I don't want to be friends with you. I feel like that goes against one of the big themes of the Bible, which is to love your neighbor and to be kind to everyone, even if they don't necessarily agree with what you're doing. So that kind of rolls me into the next question of like, how do you end friendships that are like naturally going apart without rebuking them? Like I said, don't play the holier than thou card. Those friends that had left, I still have the connection with them, but they were friends for that season of my life, if that makes sense. Like I know you guys are in high school. They were my high school friends. And now I have my, college adult friends. And it's not that I don't like them. We still talk to each other and we're still like distant friends and we'll connect every now and again. But there's just like, it reminds me of the verse, there's a season for everything that long, where it's like there's a season for joy and crying and everything. Kind of like friends come at different seasons. I needed those friends for that time in my life, and they were a great foundation and a great group for me to fall back on. But in this time in my life, I have Sarah and Cameron and Jackson, and really these are just like all my friends right here besides Corbin. And that's what this time in my life is, and I hope that they stick with me for a while. But that's
Awesome.
what I would say.
These are my friends. All
Yes.
right. That's great. Hey, better to have 2 or 3 amazing friends than like 50.
Yeah,
right?
that's true.
Cam, let me throw this one to you, buddy. The student's question was, if Jesus is not at the center of a friendship, how good can that friendship really be? And I'll just add to that, how good of friends can you be with someone who doesn't share the same faith and beliefs as you?
Yeah, no, I think that you can still have an amazing friendship with someone who doesn't care about Jesus, or if Jesus is not at the center of the friendship. But the problem is that friendship will only go as far as it goes until it probably just spirals and crashes, because Jesus is not at the center of it. Because if Jesus is not at the center, each friendship gets tested at some point. And sooner or later, someone will get annoyed. You'll pick up on the little things, and there comes a crossroads of sorts where you have to either choose grace in those moments, or you either get mad about it and lash out, and that's where friendships, I think, can be broken. Like, I know as a dude, I remember in high school, it's just a lot of competition, like with your homies. When it comes to, I don't know, like say Corbin, we're in a fantasy football group chat, and I wouldn't be surprised if they're like some of those friendships are in shambles. Maybe they're repaired now, but like they may have been in shambles because of just the competition, and someone says something that may be received as cocky. And I think like when you really have good personal friendships, in those friendships you got to choose grace, you got to choose compassion, you got to choose empathy, and really ask yourself, is it better without this friend? Is life better without this friend? And the answer probably is no. Also, I had a Bible verse in there somewhere. Let me see if I could add a little Jesus to the mix in this. In Proverbs, there's a lot of good stuff in Proverbs. I know you said that we've been going through the book here on Sundays. Is that what we've been doing? So Proverbs 17:17, I think that was one of the verses listed, says, "A friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity." I love that last part. A brother is born for adversity. So your best friends are going to be the ones that may get annoyed by you. You may do something that you don't like, or vice versa. But when you choose grace in those times, that's a brother. That's a good friend. And I think that friendships last only as long as Jesus is in that center of it.
Are you trying to say I annoy you or something, man?
No. The question is,
Only
like
sometimes.
it really comes down to this. Like when you're younger, like middle school, even early high school, you can just be in class together, you can play sports together, and your faith doesn't seem as big of an issue. The older you guys get though, like you're gonna have to make decisions, you're gonna come up with these convictions and beliefs that you have, and if you're around people that don't share those, there's gonna be more and more opportunities where you see the conflict there. And keeping Jesus at the center is just super, super important. So, Jack, let me throw this one to you then. What about my friends who aren't Christians? How can I share? Some of the questions we got were, how can I share my faith with my friends who are atheists? They don't believe in God. How can I invite friends to church, even if they never want to go? So, like, how do we do that? How do we be friends and leverage our influence in that friendship when it comes to our faith and being Christian?
Yeah. So, I want everybody to listen up real quick. Like, if this is something that you haven't experienced yet, this tension of like, I have friends who don't believe things that I think are super important to believe. Like, these are life-changing truths. I really think that everybody I know, all of my friends need to hear this, but maybe they're just closed off to that idea. Maybe it's what their parents believe, what they've heard, the experiences they've had. This is gonna come up at some point in your life. The hard thing is, it is uncomfortable. Like I don't know why I got all the questions that are like, I don't have the answer for you. But to a certain extent, I really don't, and I don't want to lie to you guys. This is something that I still feel so uncomfortable with, and I try not to fall into this trap where, like, hey, look at all my very Christian friends that are here on this Christian panel answering Christian questions at a church. And look at all of us. I never face this anymore. That's not what we're called to do. We're called to make disciples and be a part of people's lives and to minister to one another. So it is really hard. And I'm thinking about this, like, it's uncomfortable. And there's some practical things that I think you guys can do that isn't like going up to your friend tomorrow at school and being like, it's time. I got to tell you about Jesus, or else, like, you're probably not going to do that.
Or else what? Or else.
So, I mean, I don't want to get super dark, so I'm not gonna. But like, here are some things that I think are things you guys could actually do. I think you can actually set an example. I think you can actually have influence in your friend groups. I think I remember being at a party in high school, which is so funny because I did not end up at many of those. So that one time I was at a party, I got offered alcohol and I said no. And somebody said why, and I said, and this was, I probably didn't need to go to this church, but I was like, I'm leading a small group tomorrow morning. I'm
fine with that.
They noticed that, like, oh, there's something different. And I mean, that's a very specific example, but when you are living that example, there's gonna be things that come out, and it's gonna be way more natural when that is actually, like, that was prompted by what that friend said to me. And so I pretty much had to give them that answer if I was going to be honest at all. So that for sure. And then another thing is, like, tell our story. I have had a few opportunities in my life, but they have been really, really cool where I get to tell my story, where I get to, like, if somebody, whether it's a family member or a friend, is like, so what is it about? Like, what about it is so special, so important to you? And you have that opportunity to tell your story. You can't mess that up, really, right? Like, it's not, you don't have to have all the Bible verses memorized. You don't have to have everything figured out. You don't have to have the answers to all their questions. But if you know your story and you know what God has done in your life, like, that's gonna be impactful. And we'll get into more of that in the next few weeks with another series that we have coming up. But I wanted to add a little bit of Jesus in here too, like Cameron said.
Amen.
So I have a verse. This comes from 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 15. It says, "But in your hearts honor Christ the Lord as holy, always being prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you. Yet do it with gentleness and respect." There's a couple things that I want to focus on really quick. With gentleness.
Oh, nope. I'm going to cut you off, actually, Jack. I love you, and you're about to start preaching. I can see. When you're like, I got 3 points here. Let me just sum up what you said. You said, don't be weird. Always set the example. When the opportunity presents itself, share your story. I love that. That's all really, really good. There's only one thing you forgot. Invite them to Grove Youth, always. Yes. Cool. Sorry, we have 900 more questions to get to here, so I want to make sure we have time for that. Just one question in this category, and that is on relationship hurt. And some of you guys have some great questions that really showed how much you have been hurt in relationships and friendships, and we appreciate that honesty and that transparency. Sarah, I'll throw this to you, and if anybody else wants to add to this, the question was, how can I identify and fight manipulations in my friendships? Why is it hard to get out of relationships that are bad or toxic for us?
Yeah, this kind of goes back to the question I was answering before and, like, you know, saying no and things like that. But I think when a relationship, if a friend is unwilling to sacrifice their wants and needs, I don't think that that's a healthy relationship. And it can very much lead to, I don't know, like, if a friend doesn't want to help you out in this situation, then, like, I'm sorry, I'm just stumbling over my words. But, like, a good friend should be able to help you out when you need it. And so a lot of times in friendships that I've had I've experienced manipulation, I just think that it was always about what they wanted to do. And that also came back onto me because I wasn't able to stand up for myself. So it's not always about that friend. But I also think that that at the end of the day, you have to be able to, in a relationship, walk with them in life and lead each other to Christ. And if you're not doing that, then that's not a relationship built on Jesus, you know? And so trying to get out of that toxic relationship, it's hard because you want to be loved and you want friends. But at the end of the day, it takes so much out of you to be in a relationship that isn't for you, if that makes sense.
I once heard someone say in some situations, the only person who's going to fight for you is you. You got to stand up for yourself. So I appreciate you sharing that. Grace, did you have something you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, just for identifying it in friendships, more specifically, I was focusing on the relationships aspect, like relationship. In my prior experience, if you were always making excuses for the other person to the people around you, or it's like, oh, they just didn't think about this, or they didn't remember this about me, or stuff like that, that is a very easy red flag, as you guys like to say, the red flags and the green flags that you can look out for. I don't know, that's just what I wanted to say.
All right, so last category, we're going to speed round this, try to get as many as we can in the next 5 to 10 minutes, and then we'll be done, okay, students? Hang tight for just a few more minutes because it's going to get really good here. Let's talk about dating and sex and sexuality, okay? Some questions here. That's okay, you can say, ooh, I heard that. Come out there. Let's talk about it. All
Calm
right.
down.
Really, really short answer, panel. When does the Bible say it's okay for me to date? Is there a certain age when it's okay to date? When should I start dating? Super fast, go.
The Bible doesn't give you an age. You know?
Okay, cool.
Yeah, that is the answer. But a lot of it has to do with when you feel mentally and spiritually prepared for a relationship. And I wrote this whole spiel, but it's a short answer, so I'll skip through it. But I think at the end of the day, even when I started dating, I wasn't prepared, and it just had to do with finding that right person and being able to grow with them spiritually and through life.
That's good.
Yeah, and I would when I I said that I shared this with my small group on Sunday. The moment that I stopped thinking about having a relationship is whenever Jackson Myros walked into my life. So it's just kind of don't make it a priority, and God makes it a priority.
I'm going to add one other thing. Hey, this is like the best advice maybe I've ever gotten in my life. You're not ready for a relationship unless your main priority in the relationship is serving the other person. That's all I'll say.
Ooh, about what you can give, not what you can get. I like it. All right, so on that topic of dating, why is it important that I date a Christian? Does it really matter? And if I should date a Christian, how do I keep God at the center of that? Cam, let me throw that to you first.
Yeah, I
Short answers.
Short answers only. Starting now.
Yes.
Go. I think that dating a non-Christian could work for you. I do not think it is wise, but I know that there are rare cases where a guy and a woman get married, and one is not a Christian, and somehow the other ends up bringing them to church, and they get converted, and they both end up Christian. That's a beautiful thing. I think that's really cool. But I would say it's a very, very rare circumstance. And in the Bible, it does talk about both. In the 1 Corinthians and in 2 Corinthians, it talks about how being in that kind of relationship could work out. If you're in a relationship where there's a believing husband and an unbelieving wife, things could go well, and you are not condemned if you are in that relationship. But you cannot, at least in marriage, you cannot leave that relationship because one is an unbeliever. But vice versa, it also speaks that it is not wise to not be with an unbeliever, because what do we have in common, as Paul says?
I like that. So it's not like you guys will lose your salvation if you date somebody who's not a Christian,
Yeah.
but it's not wise to do
Yeah,
that.
yeah. And real
Cool.
quick, can I speak on my experience real quick?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Tell us all
Hey,
about
so
Unpack it.
Hey, I'm single, by the way. Last year.
Okay, moving on.
That's not
Why are you saying that? Who are you talking
It's
to?
not an advertisement. I'm just saying. Last
Pack it up.
year, I was at Top Golf.
Crossroads.
I met Top Golf. I met Top Golf. I was at Top Golf,
That was a joke.
and I
That was a joke.
I know.
It's all a
Hey,
joke.
Hey,
I mean, not all of
can I
it.
get to my story?
Top
Can I
Golf.
get to
Go
my
ahead.
story? All right, we're doing this quick, rapid fire. So I was at Top Golf, and I met a nice young lady. We exchanged numbers.
Yeah.
There seemed to be good mutual interest, and we were handling it like adults. And pretty much 8 hours later, I told this lady that I work at a church, and that pretty much just like I shared my faith. And for some reason, I just assumed it would be like that, both sides. But turns out some people don't love Jesus. And it's actually pretty common. And with that being said, like, she cut it off pretty quick and was like, "Oh man, I don't think we could do that." Like, I'm grateful that she saw right away that we would just have very different mindsets and worldviews in that. Like, that's a real thing. I know it's funny. It's a real thing
Oh, man.
that like I'm glad that she recognized that. And it's
Me
not
too.
wise.
I'm sorry, too, by the way.
It's not. I'm not trying to make you cry, bro. Like, it's real life.
This was at my
It's real life.
bachelor party.
Oh, dang, you were there for him? You were on the side, like, talking to this lady?
I wouldn't have done
I
that.
for sure did. I told him to.
He made me do it.
All right. Real quick, oh man, I don't know how you can make this a short answer. No. In fact, let me just skip it.
I know it's mine.
Let's be super blunt. When can I have sex? What is the appropriate age to have sex?
All right. Hey, so I have to be quick, and that's fine. I have to get through this answer as fast as I can. You guys asked a ton of questions about this, and I appreciate it. It showed that like y'all have real thoughts and real questions about this topic, and
you trust us. Thank you.
And I
Thank you for
appreciate
asking.
you guys writing those questions down. It's funny. We have more questions about sex than we did dating. So essentially, to boil it down, like, when can I have sex? Can I have sex before marriage? Why do I have to wait? All these things. And here's what I will say. I have some verses on here. Essentially, the Bible is just clear over and over again. Like, if you look up Bible verses about sex, you will find verse after verse describing how God wants our sex lives and our sexuality to look. And so let me just read these verses because I think the Bible says it better than me. Let marriage be held in honor among all. Packets are hard. And let the marriage bed be undefiled, for God will judge the sexually immoral and adulterous. That's Hebrews 13:4. Let me read one more for you. This is 1 Corinthians 7:2. But because of the temptation to sexual immorality, each man should have his own wife and each woman her own husband. So just as clear as that, like, hey, it's real. Y'all ask questions about it. People think about it. People want to have sex, and the Bible knows that. The Bible is clear. It speaks to that topic, and it gives us the answer. You know you want to have sex, and each man should have a wife, and each wife should have a husband, so that can happen the way God intended for it to.
Yeah, and the Bible is very clear, thank you, Jack, that what God's ideal is. Then there's real, and there's the fact that we all make mistakes, and very many students in this room have probably made mistakes in this area. Grace is also real, and forgiveness and God's kindness is there for us as well. The only thing that I would add to that is that it's never too late to begin again with God, and you don't have to live in shame, and you don't have to live in regret. You can start new with Christ any day, and we make a lot of decisions, and Travis Risher has been saying this a lot. Like, you can do whatever you want, you just have to deal with the consequences of what you do, and I think us as leaders, and we could talk to you guys one-on-one about this, like you just have to know that when you make mistakes, there are consequences. When you make certain choices, there are consequences, and that will affect you throughout your life, and we'd be more than happy to talk to you guys about those one-on-one. We have to be done in 2 minutes, and so I have to pick what we're going to do as the last question or two here. Any tips, and let's make this super short answer, any tips, tricks, advice on how to wait until marriage to have sex?
I put here, be smart, stop putting yourself in a situation which makes having sex easier. Just, you know that if you're home alone and you're like, oh, okay, well, I'm home alone, this is a situation for that, where I could open the door to that. You can be smart in those situations and not put yourself in a tougher situation.
The Bible doesn't say avoid temptation. It says flee from temptation.
Don't make excuses for that stuff either. Like, oh, well, it was just the way it happened. If you identify it, you got to cut it out then.
I just fell on them. Oh. No?
Okay. No.
Okay.
Or we're just going to watch a movie or something oh, they're just coming over to watch a movie, to watch Netflix and stuff.
Let's wrap it up here. Students,
HBO Max.
Students, again, we didn't get to all the questions, so I know there were questions that we didn't answer that you guys turned in. But let's say thank you to this panel real quick. All right? Guys, thank you from me to you guys. I appreciate you all sharing with these students. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and send you guys, if you go out that door and head to the living room, I want to remind you guys, I'm going to dismiss you in just a minute here, that Jack, Grace, Cameron, and Sarah are going to hang out. They're going to be here for a while tonight. Leaders are always the last ones to leave, so if you guys want to find them, they're going to be right outside in this living room area. You can go through that door. You can go out and around that way. Where the couches are is where you will find them if you have follow-up questions. If we didn't get to your question, I'll hang out up here up front. There are other leaders all around this room that you can talk to tonight before you go. But let me say this very last thing. Relationships, friendships, dating, sex, sexuality, these are issues that are formative, definitive for you guys in middle school and high school. We understand how important these things are to you. We will never tell you these issues are not significant. We don't know how much they weigh on you, how much they keep you up at night, how much you are struggling in these areas. And in fact, we don't have to pretend to understand that because you told us in these questions. So at any time, tonight or in the future, you have questions, you just need somebody to talk to, you need somebody to pray for you. Your leaders, your youth ministers, we are here for you guys. We love you, we care deeply for you, and we want you to know this more than anything else. You are not alone, all right? You are, no matter how alone you might feel in what you're going through, you are never, ever alone. That being said, let's all stand up. Let me pray over you guys, and then we'll get out of here.